Colonizing Alpha Centauri begins in the year 2150 as humanity commits to becoming an interstellar species. The decision is not driven by curiosity alone, but by survival, continuity, and the long memory of a world that learned the limits of a single planet. This is a fusion-driven interstellar vessel designed for a multi-generational journey beyond the solar system. It will travel at a constant velocity, just over 4% of the speed of light, and will require more than a century to reach the Alpha Centauri system. Humanity was born on one world, but it was never meant to remain confined to one gravity well forever. The spacecraft departs from high orbit after decades of preparation. It accelerates steadily at one Earth gravity to protect the long-term health of the population on board. For several days, the engines burn continuously, pushing the vessel farther from the inner planets and flattening every loose object toward the rear of the ship. During acceleration, the living spaces are aligned lengthwise, with floors temporarily becoming walls. Every system is monitored, every vibration measured, because failure at this stage would end the mission before it truly begins. After reaching cruising velocity, the engines shut down and silence fills the structure. The ship is now coasting through interplanetary space, carrying thousands of lives and the genetic future of humanity. Thrusters positioned along the outer hull ignite in a carefully timed sequence. The main habitat ring begins to rotate, slowly at first, then faster, until artificial gravity emerges from centrifugal force. At full rotation, the inner surface of the ring provides a gravity level nearly identical to that of Earth. From this moment onward, gravity will come not from mass, but from motion. The internal architecture is transformed. What was once a ceiling becomes the inner curve of the ring. Windows now face outward into space, while the floor presses gently beneath every step. The population adapts quickly, guided by training received long before departure. Schools, medical facilities, food production areas, and communal spaces come fully online. Vertical farms rise along the curve of the habitat, using aeroponic systems to grow crops with minimal water loss. Light cycles are carefully controlled to maintain circadian rhythms during a journey without sunrise or sunset. Beyond the rotating ring lies a central corridor that does not spin. In this weightless spine, cargo is stored and long-term resources are preserved. Small craft intended for future planetary descent are secured here, dormant for generations. This central region also allows movement between sections of the ship without gravity, a reminder that the artificial world is always in motion. Within weeks, the spacecraft passes beyond the outer planets of the solar system. The distances are vast, but at this speed, familiar landmarks vanish quickly. The ship exits the heliosphere and enters interstellar space, a region filled with sparse gas, microscopic dust, and high-energy radiation. The forward hull is layered with protective shielding, designed to absorb impacts from particles moving at relativistic speeds. Even grains of dust can become dangerous at such velocity. So, active detection systems track and deflect potential threats. Life aboard settles into a rhythm measured not by days and nights, but by rotations and schedules. The population is carefully managed to ensure long-term stability. Birth rates are regulated, family sizes are limited, and generational balance is maintained to prevent sudden demographic collapse. Every individual understands that personal choices affect not only themselves but the survival of the entire mission. Genetic diversity is preserved through meticulous planning and stored biological material carried from Earth. Microbial life presents one of the greatest challenges. Inside a closed ecosystem, bacteria evolve far faster than humans. Thousands of generations pass for microbes, while a single human generation grows to adulthood. Biologists monitor changes constantly, sequencing samples and intervening when necessary to prevent harmful mutations from dominating the system. The health of the ship depends on invisible life as much as on human engineering. As years pass, children are born who have never experienced a natural sky or felt gravity generated by mass. For them, the rotating ring is the only world they know. Education emphasizes the history of Earth, not as nostalgia, but as context. They learn why this journey began and what waits at the end. The concept of arrival is abstract at first, something promised to their descendants rather than themselves. Communication with Earth becomes increasingly delayed. Messages take months, then years. To cross the growing distance, conversations stretch across decades, and eventually, responses arrive from a past that no longer exists in the same form. Relativity subtly alters the flow of time. While the ship experiences a century of travel, slightly more time passes back home. The difference is small but symbolic, a reminder that motion reshapes reality itself. Midway through the journey, the target star system becomes visible as a distinct point of light ahead. It grows brighter year by year, no longer just another star among thousands. The knowledge that the destination is real and approaching changes the psychology of the population. Long-term planning shifts from survival aboard the ship to adaptation for a new world. The Alpha Centauri system contains multiple stars and at least one potentially habitable planet. Conditions there are not identical to Earth. Gravity is slightly stronger, and the light spectrum differs due to the nature of the host star. In response, the ship begins a gradual adaptation phase, decades before arrival. The rotation rate of the habitat ring is slowly increased, raising artificial gravity incrementally. Muscles, bones, and cardiovascular systems respond over generations, preparing bodies for the demands of the new environment. Lighting conditions aboard are also adjusted. Illumination becomes dimmer and shifts toward longer wavelengths. Human vision adapts over time. Pupils widen, sensitivity increases, and subtle biological changes begin to appear. These are not forced alterations, but guided adaptations, shaped by environment and necessity. Cultural shifts emerge as well. Traditions form that have no origin on Earth. Ceremonies mark births and deaths, reinforcing continuity across generations. Those who pass away are remembered not as victims of distance, but as contributors who carried humanity forward without ever seeing the destination. Their lives are measured not by arrival, but by purpose. As the decades progress, leadership transitions to individuals born aboard. Decision-making reflects lived experience in a closed system rather than memories of a planetary civilization. The ship is no longer perceived as a vehicle, but as a moving world. Maintenance becomes ritualized because neglect would mean extinction. Every system is sacred because every system sustains life. In the final third of the journey, preparations intensify. Training focuses on planetary operations, surface construction, and ecological management. Simulations run continuously, modeling atmospheric conditions, gravity effects, and long-term sustainability. Mistakes cannot be undone once descent begins. Approaching the Alpha Centauri system, the spacecraft begins its long deceleration. Engines fire in reverse orientation, gradually reducing velocity over many days at one Earth gravity. The rotation of the habitat ring is carefully slowed and later adjusted to match orbital operations. Artificial gravity is maintained throughout to avoid physiological shock. As the ship enters stable orbit around its destination world, the star fills the sky. The planet below is no longer theoretical. Oceans, continents, and cloud systems are visible. Generations of planning converge on this moment. The population understands that arrival is not an ending, but a transition. This is the first chapter of Colonizing Alpha Centauri. The journey has reshaped humanity, biologically, culturally, and psychologically. What follows will determine whether humanity becomes a truly interstellar civilization or remains a visitor far from home. Because the story does not end with arrival, it continues. The orbital phase is only the beginning of surface engagement. Automated probes are released first, descending through the atmosphere to sample air composition, microbial presence, and radiation levels. Data streams back to the ship in real time, informing every future decision. The planet shows signs of stability, but also unpredictability. Weather systems are stronger than anticipated, and geological activity suggests a young and dynamic crust. Construction plans are revised repeatedly as new information arrives. Habitats must be modular, resilient, and capable of expansion without destabilizing local ecosystems. The initial structures are designed to remain sealed for extended periods, allowing settlers to control internal conditions while slowly interacting with the outside environment. Soil chemistry is analyzed grain by grain, not for immediate farming, but to understand long-term potential. Back on board, social tension rises alongside anticipation. Those chosen for the first descent carry immense responsibility. Selection is based not on status, but on skill balance, psychological resilience, and genetic considerations. Every departure from the ship reduces redundancy, so decisions are cautious and deliberate. No one leaves without knowing that return may not be possible. The ship itself remains essential. It will continue to serve as an orbital hub, manufacturing center, and cultural archive. Its systems are upgraded for long-term station keeping, and its role shifts from transport to support. The artificial world that sustained life in transit now becomes a guardian above the planet. Children born during the final decades of travel face a unique identity. They are not fully of Earth, nor yet of the New World. Education adapts again, focusing on flexibility and problem-solving rather than fixed traditions. The future demands innovation, not replication. Old assumptions are questioned, including ideas about ownership, governance, and progress. Time perception changes as well. Without the pressure of constant travel, schedules loosen. Long-term thinking extends across centuries rather than years. The realization sets in that this world will not be shaped quickly. Terraforming, if possible at all, would take generations. Adaptation must therefore be mutual, with humans changing alongside their environment. Biological research intensifies. Exposure to new radiation patterns and gravity levels reveals subtle effects on human development. Data gathered during orbital habitation informs medical protocols for surface life. Evolution is no longer a distant concept, but an ongoing process observed within living populations. Cultural memory remains anchored to Earth, but it evolves. Stories of oceans and skies are retold with reinterpretation, becoming myths layered with meaning. Earth becomes a reference point rather than a destination. The idea of return fades, replaced by the responsibility of continuity. As surface missions expand, infrastructure slowly takes shape. Energy generation relies on a combination of local resources and orbital support. Communication relays are established to maintain constant contact between ground and ship. Every successful operation builds confidence, but caution never disappears. The star system itself presents challenges. Gravitational interactions between stellar bodies create complex orbital dynamics. Long-term stability requires constant monitoring. Space is not empty here, and navigation demands precision. The environment is beautiful, but indifferent. Generational handover continues even during settlement. Elders who carried knowledge from Earth become living archives. Their experiences guide early policy, but younger generations increasingly shape priorities. This transition is delicate, balancing respect for history with the need to adapt. The question of identity grows stronger. Are these people still citizens of Earth, or something new entirely? Legal and ethical frameworks strain under the distance. Laws made for a single planet struggle to apply across light years. Autonomy becomes inevitable, not through rebellion, but through necessity. Resource management remains the defining challenge. Every mistake carries amplified consequences. Recycling systems perfected during the voyage are expanded for planetary use. Nothing is wasted without reason. Efficiency becomes culture, not constraint. The ship orbits silently above, a reminder of origins and vulnerability. It represents both escape and dependence. Without it, the colony would not exist. With it, the colony must decide how long to rely on an artificial cradle. As seasons pass on the planet below, observation turns into participation. The boundary between ship and world slowly dissolves. Humanity stands at the threshold of permanence beyond its birthplace, and the outcome is still uncertain. Because colonizing Alpha Centauri is not a single event, but a process that is only beginning forward. The orbital settlement phase extends for decades as surface operations expand cautiously and deliberately across the new world. Every descent craft carries not only equipment, but expectations shaped by a century of travel. Gravity feels heavier than the rotating habitats, pressing more firmly into joints and muscles. Movement is slower at first, deliberate and careful, as bodies recalibrate to the constant pull. Medical monitoring continues without pause, feeding data back to orbital laboratories where adjustments to training and nutrition are refined. Habitats on the surface are arranged to minimize environmental disruption. Structures are elevated above the ground where possible, allowing air and water to move naturally beneath them. This design reduces erosion and preserves local chemical cycles that remain poorly understood. The goal is coexistence rather than domination, at least in the early generations. Humanity has learned, through distance and time, the cost of reckless expansion. Energy production becomes the backbone of settlement stability. Surface arrays capture stellar radiation while subsurface systems tap geothermal gradients. Redundancy is essential, because failure in a remote system can cascade rapidly. Every component is built with repair in mind, using materials that can be sourced locally over time. Import dependence from orbit is treated as a temporary condition, not a permanent solution. Food production transitions slowly from fully controlled environments to hybrid systems. Native soil is amended carefully, tested repeatedly, and used first for hardy plants designed to tolerate uncertainty. Closed-loop agriculture remains dominant, but each successful harvest grown partially in local conditions represents progress toward independence. Diets evolve, not through preference, but through adaptation to what thrives. Psychologically, surface life introduces a new scale of experience. The sky is no longer a projection or filtered view, where the systems move with unfamiliar patterns, and the horizon stretches farther than any interior space ever could. For those born aboard the ship, this openness is overwhelming. Counseling and communal support help individuals process the transition from enclosed certainty to expansive unpredictability. Governance structures adapt as well. Decision-making authority shifts closer to those directly affected by outcomes. Delays to orbital consultation are acceptable for planning, but immediate issues require immediate response. This decentralization is not ideological, but practical. Survival favors responsiveness over hierarchy. Education changes again. Children now learn through direct interaction with the environment, rather than simulation alone. Field study becomes as important as theory. Curiosity is encouraged, but caution is enforced. Every excursion is logged, every anomaly recorded. Knowledge accumulation is slow but cumulative, built on careful observation rather than assumption. The orbital ship remains populated, though its role evolves. It becomes a place of specialization, research, and long-term oversight. Some individuals choose to remain in orbit permanently, preferring artificial gravity and controlled conditions. This choice is respected, as diversity of living environments strengthens overall resilience. Humanity no longer defines home as a single surface. Communication with the distant origin world becomes increasingly symbolic. Messages are still sent, but their content shifts from coordination to reflection. Reports describe not only achievements, but mistakes and lessons learned. The exchange becomes a historical record, shared across light years, preserving continuity even as direct relevance fades. Biological adaptation continues quietly. Over generations, subtle physical changes emerge. Bone density increases slightly, muscle attachment points shift, and cardiovascular systems adapt to sustained higher gravity. These changes are not uniform, reflecting the diversity of environments between surface and orbit. Humanity begins to branch, not through separation, but through specialization. Cultural expression flourishes in unexpected ways. Art incorporates local materials, textures, and colors influenced by the alien landscape. Music adapts to acoustics, shaped by atmospheric density and habitat design. Language evolves with new concepts that had no equivalent during the journey. Identity becomes layered, defined by experience rather than ancestry. Risk remains ever present. Storms damage early structures, seismic events test foundations, and biological unknowns demand constant vigilance. Yet, Each challenge overcome reinforces collective confidence. Survival is no longer theoretical. It is practiced daily. As the first century after arrival approaches, population distribution stabilizes between orbit and surface. Birth rates adjust naturally in response to environmental constraints rather than imposed limits. The systems developed during transit prove adaptable, flexible enough to support growth without collapse. Long-term planning begins to extend beyond immediate settlement. Exploration of additional bodies within the system is proposed, not as escape, but as expansion of knowledge. The idea of remaining confined to a single world feels increasingly outdated. The lesson of the journey is clear. Movement ensures survival. Children born on the surface grow up with a different sense of scale and belonging. They do not think of themselves as travelers who arrived. For them, this world simply is. The ship above is a presence, but not a promise. Their future is grounded beneath their feet. Elders who remember departure witness a transformation they once could only imagine. Their stories become bridges between eras, reminding younger generations that permanence was earned through patience and restraint. Memory becomes a resource as valuable as any material. The settlement does not declare success. There is no moment of completion. Colonization is understood as an ongoing relationship rather than an achievement. Stability today does not guarantee stability tomorrow. Vigilance remains a cultural value. Over time, infrastructure spreads carefully, following water sources and stable terrain. Each new site is connected by communication and transport networks, designed to fail safely. Isolation is avoided where possible. Because interdependence has proven essential, the star above remains constant, a reminder of both opportunity and limitation. Its energy sustains life, but its variability demands respect. Observation continues, uninterrupted. Because understanding the system is key to remaining within it. The story of this expansion is not told as conquest. It is told as adaptation. Humanity did not arrive fully formed, nor does it remain unchanged. The environment shapes the settlers as much as they shape their surroundings. As decades pass, the distinction between journey and settlement fades. The mindset forged in transit persists, emphasizing preparation, redundancy, and collective responsibility. These values become the foundation of a civilization no longer bound to a single origin. The first part of colonizing this system has always been about reaching it. The next part is about staying. That challenge unfolds slowly, measured not in dramatic moments, but in daily choices repeated across generations. Choices that will determine whether humanity truly belongs among the stars or remains forever a guest learning how to live. Resource ethics become central to every discussion. Extraction is balanced against regeneration, guided by models that assume uncertainty rather than abundance. Early mistakes elsewhere are studied carefully to avoid repetition. Waste streams are tracked with precision, and every byproduct is evaluated for secondary use. Scarcity is treated not as a failure, but as a design parameter. Health systems evolve to address conditions never encountered before. Long-term exposure to different radiation profiles requires adaptive shielding and medical protocols. Preventative care becomes more important than intervention. Continuous monitoring allows small issues to be corrected before they become systemic threats. Medicine shifts from reactive treatment to lifelong optimization. Social bonds are tested by distance and diversity of experience. Those in orbit and those on the surface develop distinct perspectives, sometimes leading to misunderstanding. Regular exchange programs are established to maintain empathy and shared purpose. No group is allowed to become isolated long enough to forget the others. Children are taught not only survival skills, but stewardship. They learn that every structure stands because someone maintained it, and every ecosystem remains stable because someone chose restraint. This education is experiential, rooted in participation rather than instruction alone. Technological innovation slows intentionally. Rapid change once drove progress, but here stability matters more. New systems are introduced gradually, tested extensively, and only adopted when they demonstrably improve resilience. The goal is longevity, not novelty. The settlement calendar begins to reflect local cycles. Timekeeping adapts to orbital periods and seasonal patterns. Celebrations align with environmental milestones rather than historical anniversaries. Culture synchronizes with place. Exploration teams venture farther from the initial sites, mapping terrain and cataloging life forms. Discovery is approached with humility. Not everything encountered is immediately useful, but everything is documented. Knowledge is valued for its own sake as well as for application. As population grows, discussions of expansion beyond the initial world re-emerge. These conversations are cautious, informed by lived experience. The memory of the long journey tempers ambition. Expansion is framed as a responsibility, not a right. The orbital ship undergoes refitting to extend its lifespan indefinitely. It becomes a movable archive, capable of supporting future missions if required. Its presence is reassuring, a reminder that mobility remains an option even as routes deepen. Generational narratives shift again. Stories of travel blend with stories of building. The idea of arrival becomes less important than the idea of continuity. Identity stabilizes around shared effort rather than shared origin. Environmental monitoring reveals gradual changes influenced by human presence. Feedback loops are identified early, allowing corrective action. The settlement learns to listen to the planet, interpreting signals rather than imposing expectations. Conflict arises, as it always does, among humans, but resolution mechanisms emphasize restoration over punishment. Cohesion is recognized as a survival tool. Division carries too high a cost to ignore. The future remains uncertain, but uncertainty is no longer feared. It is expected, planned for, and respected. Humanity has accepted that adaptation is perpetual. This continuation marks not an ending but an inflection. The foundation has been laid, but the structure is still rising. Every generation adds a layer, shaped by conditions they did not choose, but have learned to understand. Colonizing this system is revealed to be less about distance crossed and more about mindset transformed. The greatest change occurred not upon arrival, but during the long commitment to remain, to learn, and to endure together. Looking ahead, planners consider scenarios spanning centuries. Climate shifts, orbital variations, and stellar behavior are modeled continuously. Preparedness replaces prediction as the guiding principle. Redundant habitats are designed not out of fear, but prudence. Art and philosophy continue to evolve, reflecting a society that has accepted limitation without surrendering aspiration. Creativity thrives within constraints, finding meaning in precision and care. The settlement gradually becomes self-defining. External reference points matter less than internal coherence. Humanity here measures success by persistence and balance rather than expansion alone. The journey that began as escape has become a commitment. Every sunrise on this world affirms that choice. The story remains unfinished, written daily by those who live within its consequences and possibilities. In this way, the settlement moves forward without finality. Each solution generates new questions. Each answer invites deeper responsibility. The population understands that survival is not static but dynamic. Care, attention, and humility remain essential. The future will test these principles repeatedly, and only continued cooperation will determine whether this distant world becomes a lasting home or a temporary chapter in a longer human story still unfolding. For now, the work continues quietly. Systems are checked, lessons recorded, and lives lived with intention. The pace is steady, neither rushed nor stalled. This balance defines the present moment and shapes everything that will follow. What comes next depends on choices made slowly, thoughtfully, and together. Those choices will echo across generations yet unborn.